Hugh Carter, who is a legal counsellor. Hugh stepped in because our lawyer that we had coming couldn't make it. So we really appreciate it, Hugh, if you'd like to come up and have a little chat to us in regards to the legal. Thank you very much.
Kind of invited to do this at short notice, but I'm glad it was. And I'd like to firstly thank everybody for attending. And this is a really, really important issue that I became involved in not long after Dawson Creek was contaminated by aerial bombing of the chemicals, nasty little red granular, green, yellow granules. They were all over the rocks, fill up all the native life, and it was just astounding how just appalling people could be. And knowing exactly what they were doing, they ultimately said it was an accident. I think a lot of years. All right, look, I'm here as a lawyer. I better talk to you like a lawyer. Yeah, how's that? Better? All right, I'll park it on my chin. There you go. I'd be too terrible on the voice, wouldn't I? All right, now, we've been approaching this from a political perspective. I've worked as legal advisor for Senator Roberts. I've been doing that for 6 years now, and it's a wonderful job. It gets me to do things which I can really get my teeth into. We had planned to ask questions about the firearm programs and the eradication program directly to those responsible, the Australian Pesticides, Veterinary Medical Authority, who are the ones who put out the permits, supposedly have done all that research, and also to the Department of Agriculture, Fisheries and such, to actually put them on the spot as well as to what they were doing. I haven't got a lot of time to speak with you, so I'm going to actually do something slightly different. I'm going to point out a couple of the significant problems from a legal perspective that are going on, and then I'm going to actually swing across and say how you might respond if these people descend on you. One of the things that the legislation says is that you can, in fact, obstruct somebody coming onto your property with a view to applying these chemicals if you have a reasonable excuse. What is a reasonable excuse has not yet been publicly said by any of these authorities. They're trying to leave it up to their own officers who have very little training, very little understanding. They're under orders to basically get this stuff out there, and they're not listening very carefully to what people are saying back to them. So let's just quickly have a look at the permits, because Connie was very good at pointing out some of the basic problems already within that. The first restraint in permit number PER 87728, that's the one that deals with pyriproxyfen. It says, do not apply as a preventative for red imported firearm control. Well, it seems a bit, straightforward, doesn't it? Preventative. They're not trying to say as a killer, to bump them all off. They're saying as a preventative. Well, this being the case, why has it been widespread by aerial and ground application to properties where there's no firearm activity? Or it's been identified by persons from the National Firearm Eradication Program in breach of the permit. That would seem to me to be a pretty reasonable excuse. Would you think so? Well, that's one that I suggest you keep in mind. What Australian research has been done in relation to the effects of the chemical on humans? Well, overall, as far as I know, and I think they're trying to rely on some international stuff, but there's been absolutely nothing done in Australia that one can easily, quickly point to say it is safe and effective. Because that's what they love to use. The first restraint in permit number PER 90213 relates to the usage of S-methoprene. It says, do not apply where fire ant populations are not evident or no longer evident. So even if they've been there and gone, you shouldn't use it again. Now that being the case, why are persons from the National Fire Ant Eradication Program insistent on applying the chemical multiple times on properties where no fire ant activity has been seen or is evident? And that's in breach of the permit. If they're going to do that, that would seem to be a pretty reasonable excuse. Please note that down. Now, they say in relation to S-methoprene that you shouldn't allow or use it when it's not possible for poultry to have direct access to the baits. Does that mean, is it a poison to bird life? What about our native birds? All the environmental protection people? Oh my God, where are the Greens? Oh, all that, it wasn't a political shove-up, wasn't it? All right, but nobody's talking about that. And the threats to our native life. If it's going to bump off fire ants, it's already bumping off all the other insects as well, which are part of the food chain for small animals and birds, stuff like that. Like me, I suspect you all actually do have some concern that you don't want them to all just go and die. So we do have a role in protecting the environment, and that includes them as well. Now, I'm confused. This permit, the one that I'm just talking about in S-methoprene, I'm confused because on one hand it says that treatment may be applied into waterways up to 1.5 metres from each bank, that means in the water. Yet at the same permit it states the chemical is, quote, very toxic to aquatic life. Are they stupid?
Yeah.
In their own permit? Do you think that looks a bit silly? Well,
yeah.
when something is as inconsistent as that, that sounds like a very reasonable excuse to me. And certainly, as Connie said, no Australian environmental impact study that we can point out to that indicate that it's so effective. All right. So, we were also going to ask some questions. Basically, my questions, or the questions that Malcolm was going to ask, Senator, asked in relation to the Australian pesticides guys. We also had some questions that we were shaping up to ask in relation to DAF as well. That's the Department of Agriculture, Fisheries and Forestry. We were going to ask them what their overview was. Why are they using intimidating and overreach tactics? Since when is it okay for gates and fences to be broken down with police presence, threatening those even with reasonable excuses, who withhold consent to strangers forcing their way onto their properties for few to spread poison when there's not a fire ant within Cooley? And that's exactly what happened. It's happening all over the place. Now, as I said, a property owner can obstruct and refuse access to officers if they have a reasonable excuse. This is a burning question. Now, to work out what a reasonable excuse is, generally, the test at law is simply to put that question to reasonable, ordinary people, and what would that person think? Would that be a reasonable excuse? So, you heard it first here. These are the sorts of questions we would put to the organisation, to DAF, the department who has the responsibility for overviewing all this. These are the sort of things, and I'll put it to you. And nice loud responses, please. Is it a reasonable excuse to obstruct when the chemicals represent a threat to domestic animals, dogs, cats and birds if they're exposed to toxic chemicals?
Yes! Absolutely.
Is it a reasonable excuse to obstruct when the chemicals represent a threat poultry, livestock, fruit and veg growing on the property?
Yes.
Is it a reasonable excuse to obstruct when the chemicals are not being administered according to the safety requirements under the permits?
Yes.
Why is aerial application of the pyriproxyfen occurring on a wide scale on areas where there's no fire ants have been identified? And the permit says do not apply as a preventative measure for red imported fire ants. Is that a reasonable excuse?
Yes.
Is it a reasonable excuse to obstruct when the administering authority has already disastrously polluted a significant waterway in the Samford Valley near Brisbane, killing extensive native marine, reptile and insect species?
Yes.
And I know that's true because I was there and saw it. So was the Senator, by the way. Is it a reasonable excuse to obstruct when the chemicals have already been shown to not discriminate between insects and have already wiped out thousands of domestic and native bees and their hives?
Yes. Yes.
All right, you don't have to respond now. I think I've got the point. No environmental safety in relation to humans. Who's responsible for what constitutes a reasonable excuse? And really, the best answer to that is it should be by a court. Not some easy little public servant. And we know that money is the root of all evil. Will DAF step up to pay compensation to those affected by the misapplication of the fire ant eradication program?
Yeah,
That's what needs to happen.
that's what
If
needs to
anyone
happen.
wants to actually talk about these things, we'll be around for a bit after all of this, and anybody can make contact with the office and come and see me, and I'll give you a phone number. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I don't like politicians very much. And I've been working for one for nearly 6 years. I had never, ever considered working in the area of politics before that. I'm a barrister, I still am. I still hold my practicing certificate, and I've had that since 1985. So if you do maths, it's actually a while. I've worked as a lawyer very closely in what's called the protective jurisdiction. That basically means I've worked assisting for 30 years, assisting vulnerable people in the community. People with intellectual disabilities, their families, people with mental illness and their families. And I did that until I had a cup of coffee. This fellow over here, Senator Malcolm Roberts, he said, I'd actually like to have a chat with you, Hugh. Somebody said that you've been doing good work. I said I didn't like politicians. That's still pretty close, with one specific exception. I really like Senator Malcolm Roberts. And he was very, very willing to support the coming federal election.
Yes.
Thank you. Malcolm Roberts.
Thank you very much, Hugh. Malcolm, would you like to come and have a few words, please?
I've got a fair bit of energy moving around my shoulders. Can you hear me?
Hold it now.
I've got a fair bit of energy moving around my right shoulder. I've been practicing meditation for about 24 years, and every now and then bits and pieces of energy start moving. So I'll just use the microphone like this. First of all, I want to congratulate everyone involved. Everyone. Look at the people. Sarah, Connie, Trevor, Hunter. Hunter's here from Boona area. He's done fabulous work. We've been to Gatton, Boona, Currumbin, Samford. This is a common problem right across the southeast. We've also met with Ben, Brett, and the teamwork evident is quite phenomenal. We sat down in Ben's coffee. He gave us coffee and lunch actually before we came out to Dawson Creek. Really wonderful team. This is a professional outfit who are working for nothing. They're very, very good, and they're working right across. We've got Kenneth Beamer down in the Gold Coast. We've got Gary Duffy married to Connie Turney. We've got, well, what is the main, we've also had Jim now. Jim's fabulous on biodiversity, he really is. He's been working with us for some time. This issue is not about red ants. This issue is about democracy and saving our country. I can tell you that now. The common threads are right through it. And it's also about our children. That's what it's about, the future of our children. And it's about, as Jim pointed out, and other speakers have pointed out, about property rights. And property rights are fundamental to enterprise, to human progress, and to a free enterprise. I've seen people in 4 or 5 different groups now have been involved with fire ants, from the first one at Gatton, which was probably about 2016, 2017. People have got a variety of feelings. Some are feeling angry, feeling frustrated, feeling depressed, mental health problems, as Trevor keeps pointing out. Some are feeling excited because they're getting ready for battle. But some are feeling frustrated and hopeless. This is overwhelming for so many people because it's basically based on bullshit. And it's hard to fight bullshit. The needs that people are talking about and are needing: safety, health, mental health, property rights, security. They also want justice, honesty and truth, and they're not getting that from the state and federal governments. I'll get on to what we've been doing later. It's failed. I don't need to go through the history now from 2001 and 15 years earlier than that. It's failed from one fire ant nest to now over 2,000, as I understand it. And it's now encompassing a far greater area. It has completely failed. What's more, I've been asking people, what is the danger of fire ants? I can't find any. How many people have died from fire ants, Jim?
Racing up to 0.
I've only heard one problem with fire ants. Some lambs were inconvenienced. But the other thing I want people to see is not just democracy and property rights, it's also care. These people are caring. And what I've seen time and time again, I used to be one myself, working voluntarily to fight a government over a government lie. Spending your money, billions of dollars of our money, to hoodwink us, and we have to do that for free as volunteers. These people are all volunteers. And as I said, we've been chasing this issue for several years now. Gatton, Boona, Currumbin, Samford. I'll give you a little taste of what happened at the first one I went to, Gatton. The people from the state government came and said, we want you to go to the 3 booths at the back. There are tables set up. You can ask all the questions you want. We said, no. We want the forum. That's what we want. They said, you can't have a forum. The booths are here set up. They did not want a discussion of what are they afraid. They did not want a discussion. We stood up and we debated with them and got a discussion and an open forum, and they did not like it. This is about control. This is a very serious issue. It's about the environment, human health, including mental health, property rights, governance. I've been to Dawson Creek and saw the damage there firsthand. It's also about protecting the law, because these people seem to be above the law, the people pushing this. Time and time again we see this coming up. Let's kill the environment to protect the planet. That's what they're doing. They're doing it in the name of the environment without a real threat. We've done letters to state and federal ministers. We've had questions in Senate estimates that Hugh prepared, but the Albanese government called off Senate estimates after just 1 day. It's supposed to be 10 days. We've done speeches, we've done rallies, we've had Hugh go to advise people, we've been in an inquiry and asked questions of witnesses in an inquiry. This is a state issue, but we have been using our federal influence to try and help. Fundamental to all of this, there's a massive conflict of interest. There is a conflict of interest because, as we understand it, we've been told, I think Sarah's got the details on this, the husband of a state member of parliament has the contract for dispersing the chemicals. He also, as I understand it, has a contract for supplying the chemicals. And if I'm wrong, I'm happy to apologise, but that's what I understand, and these people have done their research. And there are no ants in Samford Valley. But they're getting paid to spread this toxin. This is all about, like so many other issues facing governments in this country, this is about control, property rights, and wealth transfer. Transfer from you to the people pushing this treatment. We have a perfect solution: self-treatment. And self-treatment brings responsibility with citizens. When it's imposed, as Jim kept talking about, imposed over the top of people, it is hideous and ineffective. When it's self-treatment, people take responsibility. And responsibility is a magic word. This is about democracy, and democracy thrives on responsibility. The key problem here is governance, shoddy governance, repeatedly at state and federal level. Governments are supposed